No matter what you're growing, how you're growing it, or where you're located, the weather's going to have an impact on your agricultural operation. From tracking soil moisture for irrigation, to light levels for plant growth, or temperature and humidity in animal enclosures, you'll likely have all sorts of technology to record weather data. We know that data can sometimes be hard to read and capture, though, so we've created a subsection of Farmbrite devoted to recording and visualizing climate data trends at your farm. There are four main climate features in Farmbrite: the weather history and weather map that come preloaded with data for our US customers, and two that allow you to track your own data, gauges, and climate logs that are available worldwide. Let's jump into the software and take a look. You'll find an entire section of Farmbrite dedicated to climate in the left-hand menu. You can record your own data under the Gauges and Climate Logs menu, but even if you don't have a weather station to take those measurements, you'll still find the climate section immediately useful, as it comes preloaded with data from the USGS, National Weather Service, and NASA for you to review and gain insight from. This Weather History tab shows you graphs of past precipitation and temperatures, while the weather map is a bit more in-depth with dozens of overlays with all kinds of important and interesting data. You can load map layers for temperature, vegetation, precipitation, soil moisture, and a lot more. And of course, NASA can give you informative insights, but that rain gauge that's mounted in your southwest barn or the thermometer in your chicken coop is going to be extremely helpful for your own unique operation. And that's why we allow you to create your own sources of data and then record logs for them. You can associate these gauges with fields, buildings, and animal enclosures, which lets you track different data in different places and then draw correlations to its effects on your livestock and crops. And when you want to add that data into Farmbrite, you can add a climate log. See that each log is associated with a date and a gauge, and lets you track information like precipitation, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and a lot more. When you create one, note that none of these are required. You can track what's important for you and your operation. You can add them every day, once a week, or whatever works for you. If your home weather station connects to your computer, it might have the ability to download a spreadsheet that you can import. Or maybe the manufacturer has an app integration through Zapier that would let you add them to Farmbrite automatically. However you choose to add them, your data will be averaged and graphed on this page, giving you a visual representation of your microclimate. And now that you have a foundation for how the climate system works, let's take a look at how you can import those climate logs. We're under the climate logs section. I'm going to click the Actions button, and we have a choice here to import records. Like all Farmbrite imports, you'll see that this is a three-step process. You'll upload the file, do some data mapping, and then see your results. Now in this first step where we're uploading the file, we provide you a CSV template. This is a great starting point for you to import the data into Farmbrite. You can download it, and you'll see that it's a spreadsheet with column headers for you to map information from your weather station into Farmbrite climate logs. Different weather stations might output this data differently, but as long as you can download the data from it into a spreadsheet, you should be able to copy and paste that data into this template. You'll see the columns for the different data points, things like temperature, wind speed, precipitation amount, humidity, and a few more. I want you to immediately know that not all of these are required. Your weather station might not gather all of these, or maybe some of them aren't important to you. You only have to complete the columns of data that you actually want to import. In addition to the data, the date column is also very important. Each row on your sheet could be a different date. Or maybe you'll have two rows per date, one with maximum values and one with minimum values for the day. Let's add some data to the sheet so you understand what I mean. So you can see that each row represents a date, and that we've added all the relevant data to the appropriate columns. The last critical step here is to complete the Gauge ID column. Let's go back to Farmbrite and navigate to Gauges. Each one of the different gauges that we've set up has its own unique ID. That way, we can tell Farmbrite that the data is associated with this particular gauge. In this case, we're going to use Southwest Barn, and you'll find the Gauge ID here. You'll want to copy this, and then go back into the spreadsheet and paste it into the Gauge ID. Now it's going to be the same for all of the rows. And if you want to format it to make it match, you can do that if you'd like. It might make it look a little bit cleaner and easier to read, but it's not required for the import. Now we're ready to import this data. We'll change the name of the file and then save it as a CSV. We'll go back into Farmbrite, go back to our climate logs page, and right back to the import. When we're importing the data, we want to add new records. You could always update existing records if you needed to through an import, but you'll probably leave this selection on Add New Records. We'll choose our file, and then click Next. And because we started with the template, you'll see that Farmbrite automatically recognizes the column headers. Gauge ID goes to gauge ID, moisture to moisture, temperature to temperature, wind to wind, and so on. We'll click Import, and see our 14 records for the first 2 weeks of this year were imported successfully. Also, be aware that the import is limited to 1,000 records. You probably don't have that many to add, but it's worth noting. Now let's go back to the climate section and look back at our logs, and we'll see all of the additional data charted here. Be aware that by default, this page does show you all of the climate logs across any gauges that you've created, but we can navigate to the filter in the upper right and then choose a particular gauge. Let's use the Southwest barn that we just imported data for. Of course, you could also set a date range or filter on other aspects if you wanted to. And now we just see the data and the charts that are relevant to that gauge. Now it might be easier to draw correlations between the precipitation we had this day, the drop in temperatures here, and our crop growth or livestock health. Reach out to us if you have any questions about using the climate system.